Hello, Texans. Welcome to the program. It's a big one because it's OTAs week, and we've got the General, John McClain, joining us. Mark Vandermeer and John Harris with you. General, we were out there for OTAs. Give us your assessment, what you thought, overall view. Good evening.
Good evening, guys. I'm always interested in OTAs on new players, veterans, especially rookies. And they got a lot of new players. They got a lot of new players on both sides of the ball. You can't tell jack squat about linemen because they can't touch each other, breathe on each other. But you can watch receivers run. You can watch DBs turn and run with them. And the guy I like watching running the most is Tank Dell, because not often do you get shot and you can come out and be ready to go the first day of OTAs and look exactly like you look before you suffer, what was it, a fractured fibula? And he looks like he did at this time last year as far as speed and quickness. And so that's great to see. Even though Stephon Diggs wasn't out there when we were, the idea of having Diggs and Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz, other than the 49ers, and I think we've talked about this before, maybe the Lions, there's not another team that can put four out there as dangerous as they are, and they specialize in different things. So it means the entire field is going to have to be covered. And then I was eager to see Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's big, a lot bigger than Devin Singletary. He's bigger than their last 1,000-yard rusher, Carlos Hyde, which is one reason he's been durable. So can't wait to see him when they can start putting on the pads and hitting somebody. But it's great to see him back on the field. They're just as fired up as everybody else is about the season. They're not going to talk about the Super Bowl. They're not going to talk about records, but they have high expectations for themselves.
General, one of the things that D'Amico talked about in his presser after OTAs was Dameon Pierce. Of course, everybody wants to talk about Dameon Pierce. It's almost like we're forgetting Joe Mixon's here. Like, hey, guys, Joe Mixon, one of the better backs in the league, is here. Because everyone wants to talk about Dameon. Is Dameon going to bounce back? Maybe we're taking Joe Mixon for granted. But one of the things that he did say at the very end was, man, we look forward to having that 1-2 punch with Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce. Now, Dameon obviously did not have the greatest year last year, and he admitted there were some things that he wanted to do a little bit better. When you heard D'Amico say that about the 1-2 punch with Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce, what are your thoughts? What do you think about that potential, a 1-2 punch between Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce?
Well, if we base it on last year, not much. Pearson didn't learn the new scheme. And I'm guessing D'Amico would say that if he spent a lot of time working on the scheme, but you can't be hit. But there's a certain discipline required to play in Slowick's system if you're a running back, where Dameon liked to go all out, all footballs to the wall, and run over people when he had to. And you can still run over people when you get on the second level, but the key is to get there. And they would not have traded for Joe Mixon if Bobby Slowick did not sign off on it and say, this guy can play our system. They would not have drafted Juwan Jordan if Bobby Slowick didn't say, this guy can play our system. So this is a make or break year for Dameon Pierce to show that he can figure it out. He's had a year to learn it. He's an eager learner. He's a hard worker. He wants to excel. So if that's the case and they're the 1-2 punch, that's tremendous. And I can't wait to see Jordan, get out on the field when they can hit people too, because the fact that Slowick has encouraged to get those guys, you should have high hopes. And another thing's often overlooked and underrated. Chris Strasser, the offensive line coach, was coaching the system for the first time. So he had to learn it. He had to be taught the system by Bobby Slowick. And it's about 3/4 of the way through the season, I asked him about it, and he talked about how much better Chris Strasser had gotten as he got more familiar with it. So having your backs and your offensive line coach, not to mention your linemen, having a year in this scheme, that bodes very well for the running game.
General, there's so many positives to talk about. We'll get to them all. But what to you are the biggest question marks they have remaining here? Look, they haven't played a game. They're not going to play a game for a long time, a real game for a long time. The preseason will tell us some things, but obviously not everything. What are some of the biggest question marks you still have, if any?
Well, I wrote about one of them that's on HoustonTexans.com. I'll start there with the secondary. They have 9 backs who contributed last year who are now no defensive backs who are no longer on the team. They brought in 5 cornerbacks. They have 2 safeties, Callan Bullock, and then, of course, Lonnie Johnson came back. But I've never seen a team bring in as many cornerbacks as they have, with Kamari Lassiter being, I'm guessing he will start. And then, you'd like for Jeff Okudah or CJ Henderson, the 3rd and 9th picks in the 2020 draft, to finally play the way they were projected to play. This is both of them's 3rd team. D'Amico Ryan said he didn't care what happened in the past. It was a clean slate. And because of this schedule and the quarterbacks they play, they've got to stay healthy, a lot healthier than last year, and play better than they played last year, because this is a rough schedule. The other thing, you look at the offense, how many jobs are open if everybody's healthy? 1, left guard. And you'd love to see Kenyon Green step up and fulfill the potential he showed when Nick Caserio drafted him in the 1st round. It wouldn't surprise me if Jared Patterson doesn't end up starting there, because he proved he could start and the team could win with him last year when he was playing center. And I think the line is going to be a lot better just strictly from health. You start 11 offensive linemen because of injuries, that lack of continuity it could be debilitating. And yet they won the division and won 10 games in a playoff game with all those changes they made. So 1 position open on offense. And on defense, I guess I'm going to say that Lassiter will start outside. Desmond King will be the nickel corner, unless Okudah really plays well. Maybe he starts the season outside. But in the secondary, of course, Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie will be the starting safety. So most of the time it's about depth. But my biggest question on defense are the tackles. I know who they're talking about, Foley Fatakasi and Tim Settle, but with Kurt Heinisch and Khalil Davis being the primary backups. But of all the positions, to me, after the performance they got from Sheldon Rankins and Malik Collins, whoever the 2 tackles are really going to have to step up, because they got some big shoes to fill.
General, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit with what I was going to ask you. We all, as we walked on the field, saw Kenyon Green, and he's in a new number, but he's also in a new body. And I think that was what he really needed to do. So I'll just ask kind of a what if question. What if Kenyon Green, I'm not talking Pro Bowl good, I'm not talking all pro good, but what if Kenyon Green is just solid? What does it mean for this offense if you fill that 1 hole at left guard with a Kenyon Green, a really talented young guy that just gives you really solid play week in and week out?
Well, first of all, when Nick Caserio drafted him, you draft a lineman in the 1st round, you expect him to be good.
Sure.
And he started 14 games, and it was that Washington game in which he got physically overpowered and embarrassed. And I would bet you that performance is what basically turned around his career. He had the setback, but if he didn't have the talent, he wouldn't be there. Everybody says he's a great guy. He's a hard worker. Everybody's pulling for him. He's got veterans competing with him. We overlooked Kendrick Green. They won games with Green as a guard last year. So they've got depth, but it would be a tremendous deal. And Nick Caserio could go, whew. And the key thing for him, I think, to have all this time to hit the weights and to work on his body and not make his body look better, but get stronger. Because you guys know, if you're an offensive lineman, especially if you're a young guy and you think you're strong and you're tough and you get on there and some guy across from you just ragdolls you, you're like, oh my goodness, your confidence is shot. What am I going to do? I can't block this guy. I need help. And your teammates know you need help. So he could be one of the biggest surprises and nicest surprises on the team if he could stay healthy, start 14, 15 games like he did as a rookie. And I think if he can't, they'll still have guys to play that position. But considering how highly they thought of him, he would be a tremendous addition to the starting lineup if he can win the job and stay healthy.
General, they have 4 preseason games, like we said, because of the Hall of Fame game. And we'll talk about this more as we get closer. But your thoughts from here, how do you think they handle the preseason game reps by and large? How much action does CJ Stroud see, the rest of the starters? What are you thinking there?
I'm guessing that Stroud and Caleb Williams might play a series. But what's interesting to me, and I talked to D'Amico Ryans for that story I have on HoustonTexans.com about you got so many new defensive backs. You got all these corners. They're all veterans that you've bought in, plus Kamari Lassiter. And so because of the turnover in the secondary, how do you get them all enough practice time at camp, playing time in preseason to properly evaluate them? And he said that extra game is going to help so much with an area like the secondary. And I hadn't thought about that, but there's no reason to see Jimmy Ward or Jalen Petrie or Derek Stingley Jr. or Desmond King. They got plenty of new guys out there they got to look at. And any other, say, defensive tackle, any other positions that they think is important, having that extra preseason game is great for D'Amico's favorite word, competition.
Oh yeah, definitely competition. There'll be competition throughout the AFC South. General, there's a part of me with the Indianapolis Colts that's I don't want to say I'm frustrated by it, but they've tweeted and posted and put on Instagram more videos of Anthony Richardson talking about him as he's the next Andrew Luck. And this guy has played a total of about 22 games in 4 years. I understand he's very talented, but Anthony Richardson has not proven himself in this league, and I hope it continues that way, obviously for our sake. But what are your thoughts about Anthony Richardson with the Colts? And do you think he could be that guy that they're thinking that he's going to be with all that talent? What are your thoughts on Anthony Richardson, and what does it mean if he's healthy and he's really good for the Colts?
John, they did that last year too. Yeah. For a guy that only started 13 games in college, they were really praising him and playing him up. And I'm guessing, without knowing him, he didn't need that kind of ego boost, but they gave it anyway. I know they wanted people to be fired up as a new head coach. Yeah. And then he did well, but he got hurt every game. He scored 2 touchdowns here, and they beat the Texans, and then he played some more, and then he's done for the season. So as opposed to the Texans, who last year, D'Amico would never say Stroud was the starter, no matter how many times, how many ways we asked him, even though we all knew he was. We said he would be. But D'Amico low-keyed it, just the opposite of the Colts. And now, how many videos, other than showing Stroud out helping people in the community, how many videos do we see the Texans putting out about Stroud? They don't go overboard like the Colts are. And there's no need to. I mean, he's getting enough attention on social media and around the NFL. But the more you play somebody up, the more pressure there is on them. I'm guessing they figure AR can handle it. But just like you said, John, the guy has not started a whole lot of games. And last year, being able to watch and learn behind Gardner Minshew probably was good for him. And so they're going to be all fired up that Richardson's going to be their Stroud. The Jaguars are going to be certain that Trevor Lawrence is finally going to be the great quarterback, the generational quarterback. The guy's going to make $55 million a year or whatever in his extension. And then the Titans are hoping, they don't know for sure, new coach, new coordinator, new staff, but they're doing everything they can to be able to make an accurate judgment on Will Levis, if he can be the franchise quarterback or if they're going to have to worry about it again next year. So watching these young quarterbacks in the AFC South is going to be so much fun.
Somewhat of a rhetorical question here. As far as teams, young quarterbacks or quarterbacks coming back from rehab stints, like rehab stint sounds bad, by the way. I'm talking about injury rehab stint, like Deshaun Watson or Levis being a second-year guy or whatever. Is there anything less relevant than quarterbacks looking good this time of year, especially young ones who haven't proven themselves or guys who haven't proven that they can come back from an injury yet?
I know this. When you watch a guy out there and nobody can hit him and nobody can pressure him. And when he completes passes, boy, you know he's going to be great. You know, the truth of the matter is that the OTAs don't mean jack squat when it comes to completing passes and running and all that. It means a lot on the mental part. You know, we can watch a defensive back make a great play. And everybody will say all the right things and it'll look great on social media, but it doesn't mean anything whether the guy's going to play or not. How many times have we ever heard a team have a slow start, say, oh man, we should have been better in OTAs. We should have put more emphasis on OTAs. Never, ever have I heard anybody bring up OTAs when it has anything to do good or bad in the regular season. How many times did D'Amico say last year, well, we won 10 games and we won a playoff game, 45 to 14, because of how we did in OTAs. If we hadn't done great in OTAs, we might have finished in second or third place. It doesn't happen. It's about learning. Coaches learning their players, and the players learning what's expected from them from the coaches. Players have to be coached differently. If there's a guy who's a slow learner, you can't coach him the way. If there's a guy that picks up everything and immediately and it translates quickly onto the field. But everybody's is expounding on how well their players are doing in OTAs, and I think a lot of that might be for fans, because fans are so fired up, and they're the ones that pay the freight.
I think I've seen teams that look bad offensively in OTAs where that's panned out, where they're not good offensively. Now, last year, the Texans at OTAs, I wasn't particularly over the moon with the offensive performance in OTAs, but I knew that they were breaking in a rookie quarterback, a new system, and Davis Mills, 25 starts under his belt, but it's a new system. And then we saw what we saw offensively, a gigantic leap forward in the regular season. So I guess you never know, but I've also seen it here where, man, they struggle on OTAs on offense, and it's a struggle during the season as well. I think what I'm seeing out there, though, there's a lot of iron sharpening iron out there, General.
Never heard that.
Like we said, I know, that's the thing, but there are different ways you could put it. We make each other better, whatever. But I'm thinking this defense and offense, after they both took big leaps in the league statistical categories, and obviously wins, losses, the most important thing out there. I'm thinking that this is among the most talent they've ever had, if not the most talent they've ever had. I don't know where to pinpoint it just yet. I think we have to see them play, but it's right up there, General. Your thoughts?
Well, you saw some negativity in OTAs because you're just such a negative guy. Usually, if you see bad things in OTA, you're going to see bad things in training camp. You're going to see bad things in preseason and bad things in regular season. Last year we saw Nico Collins flash as he'd done the year before. We all wanted to see Stroud be superhuman, and no rookie is superhuman in OTAs because they do so little, especially when we're out there in the media. They don't want us seeing anything. But I think you either know you got talent or you don't. And we knew they had some talent last year, but certainly not the talent to win 11 games and win a playoff game and be tied at halftime at Baltimore. By the way, I can't wait for that Christmas game. I want them to treat the Ravens like they did when Gary Kubiak was the offensive coordinator and they came here and the Texans beat them, and to get a little revenge because they've never beaten Lamar Jackson. But and just right now, everybody's so fired up. Even if we saw guys drop passes, we're not going to be thinking anything negative about the season when it comes to OTAs.
General, I'm going to ask you a question since you brought up the Ravens. I asked this question of Mark the other day. Would you rather go 3-1 to start the year and finish 1-3, or start the year 1-3 but finish 3-1?
It's not what you do in September and October, and I know the records count, the games count the same, but it's always been, it's what you do in November and December, now in January. So I'd take the 3-1 close. It means you've played Kansas City, you've played the Ravens, you've played the Titans. I can't remember who the other one is. But if you win those 3 of the last 4, it probably means you got something to play for. And if you do, and it's the playoffs, then you're going to be on a roll. Because if you go 1-3 at the end and you don't make the playoffs, no time to recover. So give me a 1-3 and a 3-1.
There you go.
Which would be more shocking, the Patriots winning 8-9 or the Titans winning 8-9?
Oh, the Patriots would be a bigger shocker. They don't have talent. Titans still got a good defense. They added Devondre Sweat next to Jeffrey Simmons. And remember, Simmons didn't play but half of last season. And they've added a lot of offensive weapons. The key for them, can Will Levis be their quarterback? And even though they don't have Derrick Henry anymore, Henry wasn't an issue with the Texans last year. That's another thing, John. You finished 3-1. Maybe you beat the Ravens for that victory, or you've beaten the Chiefs. But if you beat the Ravens, it means you've beaten Derrick Henry again. And so I think the Titans have a much better chance of winning, say, 8 games than the Patriots do, because the Patriots are going to be playing Drake May, maybe not at the start of the season, but it won't be long.
General, what team that made the playoffs last year or this past year do you think is, I don't want to say a lock to not make it this year, but you think, man, you know what? It's really dicey that they're going to make the playoffs this year.
Cleveland. Maybe.
That division
make
is
the playoffs in Cleveland with Deshaun Watson as the quarterback. As it's said on Twitter, fold the franchise.
That division is very tough. If when I'm looking around, this AFC South had 3 teams with winning records. I'm looking at the AFC West, NFC West. I would say Cleveland, because the division is so tough. Pittsburgh could finish last. Now, if you ask me a team goes last to first, I'd say Cincinnati, because Joe Burrow.
Yes.
And they did a great coaching job last year. And Brian Callahan, the new Tennessee coach, had a lot to do with that. When you got Jake Browning playing over Joe Burrow in place of Joe Burrow because he's hurt, and you still have a winning record, that's some tremendous coaching and tremendous playing. So I'd say Cleveland not to make it. Cincinnati just replaces the Browns and they make it.
Wait, does the AFC North play who? The AFC West? I guess. No, we are playing the AFC East. So they are playing each other. You know what they should have done in that round robin at the end of the year? This would have been better. I would put the Kansas City Chiefs. Who are they playing? The Steelers in the follow-up game on Christmas?
Steelers. Yep.
And I know the Steelers sell tickets or get eyeballs, whatever. But, man, the Bengals would be better. Because, General, what do you think of the Steelers? We talk about that 4-team situation where they're going to crisscross and round robin each other, play on Saturday, then you crisscross and play on Christmas Day, Wednesday. If it was the Bengals instead of the Steelers, maybe a better chance to have a contender or not. Do you think the Steelers are actually a contender by then or still at that point? What are your thoughts?
No, I think they'll be a contender for a winning record because Mike Tomlin does not have losing records. But I also think Justin Fields will be the quarterback by then. I'm not. Here's what I've asked this question. Pete Carroll's going to be in a Hall of Fame. He dumped Russell Wilson. Sean Payton's going to be in a Hall of Fame. He dumped Russell Wilson. Mike Tomlin's going to be in a Hall of Fame. And why does he think he can do what they couldn't do? So I'm assuming he'll be out after this year, but I also think Justin Fields will be the quarterback near the end of the season. Don't know if it'll make a difference, but at least he's got a future, and they'll probably end up 9-8 again and in last place. But I just don't like the move they made to bring in Russell Wilson when it didn't work for the last 2 teams.
So Russell Wilson won a Super Bowl and he lost a Super Bowl. If he gets back to the playoffs with the Steelers somehow and goes on a little run, let's say divisional round, maybe let's just say AFC Championship game, is Russell Wilson a Hall of Famer?
Not a first ballot, no.
Okay.
To me, a first ballot Hall of Famer ought to be a no-brainer, no questions. Okay. And when Eli Manning comes up, there's going to be a lot of debate because he won 2 Super Bowls, but his stats, his record, and in those Super Bowls, he made a great escape, and he threw a ball up for grabs at Tyree. David Tyree made. He and Julian Edelman have the greatest Super Bowl catches in history, and he did throw a touchdown pass to Plaxico Burress. And the other one next Super Bowl was great sideline pass to Mario Winningham. But Is that a Hall of Fame quarterback? So that's going to be a big debate. Now, Russell Wilson, I just don't think it'll be right away. I think he'll have to wait. And if Eli makes it, I think he'll have to wait as well.
How did you feel about Kurt Warner when he was up?
There was a lot of debate about Kurt, but he was, MVP, Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl winning quarterback. He helped the Giants get to the Super Bowl. He was brought him in over Eli Manning. And I can't remember how long it took him. I thought he was borderline, but he made it. I would never vote against a guy if they get to the Final Five. When they get to the Final Five, I vote yes on everybody, even if there's people I think don't deserve it.
By the way, Santonio Holmes would like a word about greatest Super Bowl catches.
That was a great one. One hair longer, and he wouldn't have been able to catch it.
Yep, Lynn Swan would like a word as well. General, last one from me. NFL football in Australia. How you feel about that?
I think it's coming. I think China's coming as well. There's talk about the Middle East. I don't know why they'd want to go to the middle. Yeah, I know why, because of gambling. It's all about money, all about gambling. Yes, they want to sell some merchandise, but it's about gambling. And I think China is coming soon. And I think Australia would be tremendous. Go down there and play where they play rugby and Australian rules football. It'd be a tremendous trip.
They should just get some of that live money, right? That live tour money. Just say, hey, we'll play a game there. Give us $500 million and we'll play a bowl game.
You're right. The Saudi Arabia could say to them, okay, we'll give you $100 billion. We'll only have $600 billion left to come over here and play a game.
Yeah.
Would the owners do it? It's just like right now, the NFL has a rule you can't have foreign ownership. But if the LIV people came over and said, look, how about we give you $50 billion for Seahawks? They're going to be in sale for a few years. You think they wouldn't be rewriting those bylaws?
I think it's a possibility. Well, we'll see if it comes to that. General, what do you have going on at HoustonTexans.com?
I've got the story I put up today that was about the secondary and all the changes, the biggest turnover in the secondary as far as players and how tough it's. Some of the decisions are going to be very difficult, even though they have only one starting job open. I think I'm going to do one next week because I heard this being kicked around on the NFL Network. One guy's NFL radio said, I would never hire a head coach who was a defensive coach, because if your offensive coach is good, he's going to be gone. And they specifically talked about Bobby Slowick, and I'm going to write how I believe that is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, because of a guy like Gerard Johnson ready to step up. And they will always have somebody waiting in the wings where they don't have to make radical changes, bringing in a new offensive coordinator, because they're going to play that same system because it's tried and true.
Yep, and they've got a quarterback who loves it. General, thank you very much.
Mark and John, thank you very much as always.